Hope you're enjoying this five greatest players in NFL team history series. I'm going to enjoy doing it all throughout the month of June. Let's move on. Today, I am talking about the Baltimore Ravens and the five greatest players in the history of the Baltimore Ravens organization. Now, one thing that I had to decide was I going to sit there and abide by the NFL's logic and the NFL's rules by saying that the Ravens have technically only existed since 1996? Knowing very good and well, damn good and well, that this to me will always, in a way, be the old Cleveland Browns franchise. And to me, I know that this team moved from Cleveland to Baltimore. Now the NFL said you can go to Baltimore, but all the Browns' history, all the names, all the records, they stay with the city of Cleveland and we'll eventually give them another franchise. But I know that that Cleveland Browns team that is in Cleveland is not the actual Cleveland Browns team technically. But nonetheless, I get past that. I will abide by the NFL's rules and I will talk about just the five greatest players in the history of the Baltimore Ravens alone from 1996 until the present day. And it's been a good history for the Baltimore Ravens organization since they came into being in Baltimore. Two Super Bowl championships, consistent contending team over the past decade, several playoff appearances and divisional titles, a very well-run organization, a good quality owner in Steve Bisciotti, one of the best general managers, some may argue the best general manager in all of professional football in Ozzie Newsome. This organization in some ways is one of the gold standards of all the National Football League. And when I was going through and I was doing the list, I'm like, well, they've only been around for about 18 years now. It's going to be kind of hard to do this list, you would think. Except it wasn't, because to me, there were really five players that stood out clearly above the rest, in my opinion, anyways, in terms of being the greatest Ravens players of all time. There were five. Now, some people might throw in honorable mentions, maybe guys like Jamie Sharper, Peter Boulware, maybe somebody like a Jamal Lewis or a Ray Rice. Some might even indicate someday it might be somebody like a Joe Flacco, perhaps, would maybe have a place on this list. But none of those guys even came close, in my view, in my opinion, to the five guys on this list. Guys that have all won at least one Super Bowl, in the case of one of them, two Super Bowls as a Baltimore Raven, all guys with multiple Pro Bowl appearances, first team All Pro appearances, appearances on NFL All Decade teams, Players of the Year, all of that stuff. These five guys to me really stand a cut above the rest. Let's get started with the list, though. And again, you're welcome to chime in if you're a Ravens fan. Let me know what you think of my list, good or bad. If you're an NFL fan, you got an opinion, let me know down in the comments, good or bad, if you agree or disagree and why. Number five, Haloti Ngata, the 12th overall pick out of Oregon in 2006. This is a guy that to me is one of the real prototypes when you're looking for versatility out of a 3-4 defensive lineman. This is a guy that can play the nose. This is a guy that can play either five technique and position. During his time with the Ravens, he's made it to five Pro Bowls. He's been a two-time first-team All-Pro. And like I said, again, really viewed as one of the premier 3-4 defensive linemen in all of the National Football League pretty much all throughout his career. He was a part of that 2012 Super Bowl championship Ravens team. Again, 12th overall, a guy that kind of fit into the Ozzie Newsome mold of these first-round picks over the years that have really panned out. Haloti Ngata was a guy that people thought was maybe, scheme restricted, and some people were unsure of his weight. He fell for whatever reason to the Ravens. They took him at number 12, and the rest is history. I wonder if the Browns wish they would have stuck with Haloti Ngata instead of doing that trade to get Kamarion Wimbley. I wonder how differently things would be for both organizations. Probably not much different for Cleveland, and Baltimore would probably still have two Super Bowl championships. But anyways, number four, Terrell Suggs, the 10th overall pick out of Arizona State in the 2003 NFL Draft. Again, another guy that people in that draft knew was incredibly talented, was incredibly productive, but for some reason he had questions about him. Where was he going to play? Ozzie Newsome didn't care. He knew the value. He took the guy, and all Terrell Suggs has done in his 11 years in Baltimore is be a Pro Bowler 6 times, a one-time first-team All-Pro, the 2011 NFL Defensive Player of the Year, a consistent player with 5 10-plus sack seasons. When everybody talks about this guy in the Ravens defense over the years or that guy, or even a Haloti Nada. I think a guy that gets some recognition, but maybe doesn't get enough recognition for just how good and quality of a consistent player he has been, is Terrell Suggs. This is a guy that has been a key component in that Ravens defense for many years throughout the 2000s, when people were talking about the Ravens still being a top flight defense. You might talk about the middle linebacker or the free safety or somebody like a Haloti Nada, but I don't think a Terrell Suggs, with the pass rush ability that he brought on the edge in that 3-4, got nearly the respect and credit that he deserved. Number 3, Ed Reed, the 24th overall selection out of the U in the 2002 NFL Draft. Think about this again. The 24th overall selection, 24th, in that not so great draft that saw quarterbacks like David Carr go to the Texans at number 1 out of Fresno State, and Joey Harrington out of Oregon go number 3 to Detroit. Ed Reed from the U, at a time where the U was resurgent and was a dominant force in college football, coming off of a national championship season. They got Ed Reed with the 24th overall selection, and during his 11 years in Baltimore, all he did was go on to be thought of as the premier center fielder, free safety in the National Football League, and be viewed as one of the all-time great safeties and free safeties in particular in the history of all of the National Football League. A 9-time Pro Bowler, a 5-time first-team All-Pro, a member of the 2000s NFL All-Decade Team, the 2004 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And when you see those Defensive Player of the Years, they tend to go to defensive linemen or linebackers. It's not every day that a defensive back wins it. Sometimes it happens. It's a little bit easier for it to happen with a safety, but it's still spectacular when a safety, in my opinion, is able to win a Defensive Player of the Year award, and he did it in 2004. A 3-time league leader in interceptions, and what was really great about Ed Reed was, as a free safety, he had tremendous instincts and tremendous range, a tremendous nose for the football. He was incredibly cerebral in his approach, and as a result, really affected the way opposing quarterbacks went about conducting and carrying on with their offensive business, in particular in the passing game. Some people might say he wasn't the greatest tackler or the most physical presence. Well, I tell you what, very rare is the player that's actually going to be able to do everything perfectly. What Ed Reed was a solid tackler, a guy that I don't think was afraid of contact, but that wasn't his game. And what got him to be a 9-time Pro Bowler and a 5-time first-team All-Pro and be viewed as one of the greatest free safeties of all time, and perhaps one of the 100 greatest NFL players of all time, was his nose for the football, his range, his instincts, his ability to game plan against opposing quarterbacks and offenses. Ed Reed was a tremendous player who did a lot of great things and was a part of that 2012 Super Bowl championship Ravens team. Number 2. Now, some people might throw Ed Reed in there at number 2, but I think he's only number 3, because when I look at organizational impact, I have to give Jonathan Ogden the nod at number 2. This was the first ever draft pick in the history of the Baltimore Ravens in 1996. They took him 4th overall out of UCLA. This was, to me, some people might argue Walter Jones, and then maybe you have Orlando Pace a step or 2 below, but to me, the premier left tackle during that decade or so, that 12 years that Jonathan Ogden played in the National Football League, was Jonathan Ogden. An 11-time Pro Bowler, basically the last 11 seasons that he played, from 1997 to 2007, he made the Pro Bowl each and every single year, and it was pretty much legit each and every single year. A 4-time first-team All-Pro, a member of the NFL's 2000s All-Decade Team. This guy, to me, was the cornerstone. He was the starting point. He was the building block of building blocks for everything else that Ozzie Newsome wanted to do as an organization. It was Jonathan Ogden. It was Jonathan Ogden, to me, that set the Baltimore Ravens organization on a higher trajectory that eventually led to them winning the championship in the 2000 season. Jonathan Ogden's importance and significance to that Ravens organization, I don't think can be understated or overstated, at all. An incredibly important player, because again, like I said, when you're trying to build a new way of doing things, and when you're trying to do something, to create a new fan base, basically moving from a Cleveland to a Baltimore, you need something that's going to excite the fan base. Now, a left tackle, in theory, wouldn't seem to do that, but when that left tackle goes on to become one of the greatest left tackles in the history of the National Football League, it becomes a pillar and a franchise piece for 12 seasons. that eventually gets some fans out to the old stadium, if you will. But I think number one, beyond question, is one guy, the one that everybody will associate with the Baltimore Ravens, the one that will always, in my opinion, be viewed as Mr. Raven, the greatest player in the history of the Baltimore Ravens organization. That is Ray Lewis. Think about this, the 26th overall pick in 1996 out of the U. I remember watching Ray Lewis in college just a little bit, and I'm like, this guy is tremendous. It's a shame he's not bigger because he'd go a lot higher. It was a shame to see just how far he dropped in draft because this guy had it. He had great explosive ability. He had great quickness. He had great instincts. He wasn't afraid. He was very physical. And all Ray Lewis did during his time was go on, like I said, to become the greatest Baltimore Raven of all time, and it's not even in question. One of the greatest defensive players of all time, probably not even in question. Arguably, maybe the greatest middle linebacker in the history of the National Football League, and that's not even really in question. A 13-time Pro Bowler, a 7-time first team All Pro, a 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, the Super Bowl MVP in that 2000 season, a member of the 2000s NFL All Decade team. You talk about things that Ray Lewis could accomplish. Ray Lewis pretty much accomplished it all. And the one player in the history of the Baltimore Ravens organization that was a part of both the 2000 and 2012 championship teams. I think beyond question, Ray Lewis is the greatest Baltimore Raven of all time. He will probably go down as the greatest Baltimore Raven of all times. I don't know how anybody is ever going to surpass him on that list because when you think about the Baltimore Ravens now, you will automatically go to Ray Lewis first. 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now, no matter what the Ravens do, they could win 8 straight Super Bowls. They could have 20 All Pros. You'll still always go back to thinking about Ray Lewis. It's about individual performance. It's about sustained level of greatness. It's about impact and meaning to the organization, ability to identify that player with the organization, that organization with that player. And all of those things perfectly come together to, in my opinion, leave no doubt about it, that Ray Lewis is the greatest player in the history of the Baltimore Ravens. Thanks again for watching. Chime in down below what you think of this list. Next up will be the Buffalo Bills, followed by the Carolina Panthers, and then my Chicago Bears. Oh boy.